I'm Charlie Bright of Gold Derby, and today I'm speaking with Ramin Bahrani, the director of the documentary Second Chance about Richard Davis, the inventor of the concealed bulletproof vest. The first thing I wanted to ask is, was it difficult to convince Davis to be a part of this documentary? Because it kind of seems like he's not very trustful of the media.
Um, Honestly, the producers had him on board before I was even on board. Johnny and Daniel from the Vespucci Group contacted me while I was editing my last fiction film, The White Tiger. And when I saw the material and the archives of Richard, they wanted me to make a fiction film. And I said that this is, to me, very interesting as a documentary. I had done two short docs, but never a fiction, I'm sorry, never a feature doc. And Richard was already on board. And we had a long talk with his son, Matt Davis, who also appears in the film. And I let Matt know that I am not coming there to make a vanity film about his father, but I'm also not coming there to do a takedown movie. And that I hope his father would be, that Richard himself would be truthful and honest and open about things that he's done, and hopefully reveal things about himself personally that might not be what they were thinking, meaning I want to know about who he is as a person and what does he dream about and what are his childhood, any number of things. And I guess when I got there, Richard was not exactly what I expected. Yeah.
So you actually alluded to this in your previous answer, but how did you first come across Davis's story, and what about it when you were approached to make it as a feature narrative film? What about that made you think it was more worthy of a documentary?
There was so much incredible archive material. Richard Davis became, in a way, a mythological figure because he invented the concealable body armor in his basement as a broke pizzeria a man. But to prove that it worked, he shot himself 192 times point blank in the chest and filmed all of it. And then he filmed 8 hours of marketing, promotional propaganda movies, some of which are frightening, some of which are absurd, funny, and frightening, and some of them are just funny, you know. And there was so much material that I didn't see any reason to pursue it as a fiction film. I wanted to talk to the real people, and so I was drawn to him. I was drawn to him as a salesman. I was drawn to him as a provocateur, as someone who, you know, there was something of an Arthur Miller character in him for me. He was a salesman. Um, he was very American. It was a rags to riches story, and in a way, it was kind of like an anti All My Sons, which is an Arthur Miller play, the one right before Death of a Salesman, where there's a family involved in a family business that has a impropriety in the business that leads to death. And then in that play, there's a real moral center to it. And here with Richard Davis, despite some tragic things that happen due to his company, no one seems to care. They just make another company and make more money. And there was something very modern about that I wanted to capture.
So I'm actually very curious. Has Do you know if Davis has seen the final product, and if he has, what was his reaction to it?
Yes, the producer showed him the film before the premiere at Sundance earlier this year, and my understanding is he liked the first half more than the second half. Yes. So
I think that says enough right there.
yeah, that's
Um,
understanding. Yeah.
so I know whenever anyone shoots a documentary, there's so much footage that you have there. And I love asking this of documentary filmmakers. Were there any parts of the documentary that you really, really enjoyed, or that really struck you, but for one reason or another, they had to be left on the cutting room floor?
Oh yes, I have several. Yeah. One is that Richard also invented a device for erectile dysfunction. He he also he also invented a bullet called Thunder Zap, it was one of the most brutal bullets ever made. It would, when it pierced you, it would blow up inside of you and rip you apart from the inside. And then he quit making it at a certain point. He discontinued it, but it was actually pretty amazing contradiction in the film, because on the one hand, he's making this body armor that should stop bullets, and the bullet makers keep making more and more powerful bullets to penetrate armor. So he has to keep making more and more stronger and stronger body armor that is still lightweight. But then he turned around and made this bullet, which was so strange. We had it in the film, out of the film, in the film many, many times. But in the end, it just didn't have a place. There was also Little Red Riding Hood, which Richard had cast a model, because he has a lot of models in his movies. He had a magazine called Sex and Violence. So he had a model dressed as Little Red Riding Hood, skipping through the forest, and she pulls out of her basket like a shotgun and blows away the wolf. There was stuff like that, and probably more that I'm not remembering now.
One of the interesting things that you show in the film is how Davis, being the employer, with his company being the employer of what, like 80% of the town that the company was located in, that he wielded this immense power. And with all that power that he wielded, and it seems like he continues to wield, did you have any trouble in getting certain people who would have been critical of him to say so on camera?
There were a lot of people who, despite things that he did that are revealed in the film, some of which are kind of really crazy, including people dying and whatnot, many people in that town still were loyal to him, because he was he brought a real business to that community, which needed jobs. And that is a good thing. Just some of the things he did around that weren't so good. I think it resulted in Aaron Westrick, the police officer who later became a whistleblower, moving to another town. Him and his wife talk even in the film about being hassled, people coming to their, sifting through their garbage, following them in cars. And then there's the young man, well, Tim Pazensky, who's in the film when he was a teenager. Now he's an adult. He's in his, I think, 40s now. But when he was a teenager, he had a very bizarre and nearly deadly encounter with Richard, which is recounted in the film in a very otherworldly chapter. He said he still was shaking when he would pass by Richard in town. So there was a weird presence to him. Yes. And then there were people who, as I said, loved him, and still do.
You brought up Aaron Westrick, and I think one of the most amazing parts of the film is towards the end when we see the reunion between Aaron Westrick and Clifford Washington, the man who shot him back in the early 1980s. How were you able to arrange that reunion between those two?
Yeah, we didn't have Clifford Washington on our radar when we did the first round of interviews. And when I spoke to Aaron, as he was telling me about Clifford and who he was and what he had done with his life, I was just astounded by that, and asked the producers, please, you've got to find him, and we should hope he says yes, and we should hope he's going to be an eloquent speaker. And fortunately, he said yes to be in the film, and he was very eloquent and rich and deep and funny. He had a really kind of great sense of humor also. And so it was always in my mind that he would be a late guest to the dinner party and bring another layer to the film. He stands in total contrast to Richard's philosophies. Richard is like a giant slab of marble that is cognitive dissonance and impunity, and Clifford Washington is the opposite somehow. And as I was talking to them separate from one another, Clifford and Aaron shot one another 40 years ago, but hadn't met since then. They had spoken on the phone a couple of times years ago. So I asked them, separate of one another, would you be willing to meet? They said they did want to meet. And then I said, could I film it? They said yes. then I proposed that maybe they could meet where they first met, which was at a breaking and entering that Clifford was involved in, and that's when he shot Aaron, and Aaron shot him back. And so that's where the meeting took place.
So we are an awards site, and you had a very interesting experience a couple of years ago when you got nominated for an Oscar for Best Adapted Screenplay for The White Tiger, which caught quite a few people by surprise. What was the experience like of getting nominated, and then that whole experience of being an Oscar nominee and getting to go to the ceremony?
Well, of course, it was great, and it was an honor, and I was very happy about it. I have some very good memories of the night, including I was able to meet with people I admire, like Joel Cohen and Frances McDormand. And it was so amazing to me because I've admired him and his brother's films for so long. And circling back, they had seen The White Tiger and liked it very much, but circling to documentaries, him and his wife had watched a short documentary I had made called Bloodkin that was on the Criterion Channel. And they liked it a lot, and they kept talking to me about it. I was so amazed that I had the good fortune to meet an actor and a director and a writer that I admire so much, the two of them, and that they would have seen my work. I just thought it was just kind of an amazing moment.
How surprised were you when you found out that you had gotten nominated?
Honestly, I was prepping a TV pilot. I don't know. I just I was happy about it. I don't know. I can't say if I was surprised or not. I was just happy about it. And I wanted my actor was nominated for a BAFTA, but I thought he was so incredible. I wish he had been nominated. Yeah.
Well, Ramin, thank you so much for joining us. We wish you all the best over this upcoming award season. And to all of our viewers, please like this video, smash that subscribe button, and don't forget to go to goldderby.com and use the Gold Derby app to make your predictions. Thanks so much, Ramin.
Thank you.